Beside a dark lake in the land of origin, the seven lords gathered to exchange information after a dangerous battle. Lord Naijiu explained that 13 ancestors led by the inference fire ancestor had suddenly launched a coordinated assault, trapping Wulin and severely injuring Jin, Mingwang, and Moman. Yuan's formation had stabilized the situation. Otherwise the seven lords would have been forced to retreat. Naijiu noted that without Starlight's full threat, the ancestors had become even more aggressive. Wulin admitted the battle had been extremely dangerous because although his body was powerful, the ancestors' highest level powers were difficult to resist. The inference fire ancestor, one of the strongest members of the innate primordial life camp and a permanent existence in the land of eternity, had instantly swallowed Wulin's main battle avatar, exposing a weakness in the Lord's cooperation. Although Wulin tore through its body and escaped, the ancestor immediately regenerated from endless flames. During that moment, the other 12 attacking ancestors and dozens more severely wounded Jin, Mingwang, and Moman, and without the assistance of the remaining lords, their main battle avatars could have been destroyed. While the lords feared no single opponent, being surrounded by many ancestors could still destroy even a main battle avatar. Starlight explained that the delaying strategy required sacrifices because part of his power had to attack the innate primordial life camp's armies, frightening the world-level primordials and greatly slowing their conquest of the source worlds. According to his observations of the future, as long as they followed Yuan's guidance, they could continue holding out. Naijiu warned that surviving 1 or 2 battles did not guarantee surviving dozens or hundreds more, since the future was uncertain and they should not rely completely on foresight. Golden Lord criticized Naijiu for worrying despite possessing life force stronger than many ancestors. Naijiu replied that he feared the failure of the delaying strategy rather than death itself because if the seven lords collapsed, the ancestors would freely invade the pavilion Shuan world group, causing it to fall much faster. He suggested Starlight increase his main battle avatar to 90% of his strength while using only 10% to intimidate the world-level primordials. Moman agreed, but Starlight revealed that his main battle avatar had already secretly recovered to 90%. Wulin was surprised that Starlight had hidden his true strength despite the seemingly desperate situation. Starlight explained that the danger had only appeared severe because he had been waiting for the right opportunity to injure the ancestors. Naijiu warned him not to overcalculate and accidentally cause the seven lords to perish. Yuan expressed complete trust in Starlight despite the tremendous pressure created by more than 70 ancestors. Mingwang then asked when Luo Feng would break through. Starlight explained that Luo Feng had already touched the mysteries of the highest level of power through studying primordial bloodlines and was now creating the primordial level Dao. After only several tens of eras, his second attempt had already reached the near Dao stage. The other lords were astonished by this speed. Jin compared it with his own experience, explaining that after becoming master of the source world, it had taken him 300 billion eras to reach near Dao and another 5,000 eras to completely master the primordial destruction path. They agreed that reaching near Dao meant enlightenment was almost guaranteed, since Luo Feng had cultivated for only 1.5 billion eras. They estimated he would require only several dozen billion eras, or at most several hundred billion eras, to completely attain the Dao. Starlight added that because Luo Feng's cave mansion operated under more than 1 billion times time acceleration, a new lord would likely be born after only about 100 external eras. Everyone believed that adding an 8th lord would increase their combined strength by at least 20 to 30%. Yuan smiled because Luo Feng cultivated the primordial life and death Dao, which would greatly benefit the entire cultivator camp. The lords had long admired supreme experts proficient in the life aspect of the highest level powers, and Luo Feng represented exactly the companion they desired. Meanwhile, inside his cave mansion, Tien Lang K successfully refined a world-level primordial bloodline after reaching 70% comprehension. The refinement triggered a complete evolution of his life, covering his body with countless frost-white hairs and transforming him into a gigantic beast that completely filled his quiet room. Slightly dissatisfied with the inconvenience, he returned to human form and proudly declared that he would become a world-level primordial before Luo Feng. Luo Feng's arrival had placed enormous pressure on him because fusion Dao cultivators could easily become world-level primordials. If Luo Feng broke through first, he would automatically become leader of the Dark World group. Tien Lang K's homeland. According to the unwritten rule that whoever reached the world-level primordial stage first would command a world group containing 2 such experts. Wanting to retain authority over his homeland, Tien Lang K had exchanged for a supporting treasure shortly after Luo Feng arrived and devoted himself entirely to advancing. Now that he had succeeded first, he was delighted that the Dark World group would remain under his leadership. Had Luo Feng broken through first, Tien Lang K would have remained a high-level primordial life form and been forced to obey Luo Feng. Feeling satisfied, he left his quiet room and waited for a lord to summon him. After waiting for a long time without receiving any summons, he became confused because under the cultivator camp's rules, every newly advanced world-level primordial should be personally received by the ruling lord, assigned responsibilities, and given command of a world group. He eventually concluded that the lords were too occupied fighting the ancestors and decided to visit other world-level primordials instead. Confident that he had advanced before Luo Feng, he believed the Dark World group would inevitably belong to him. Yuan was already aware of Tien Lang K's breakthrough because the Dark World group lay within his dominion. However, he deliberately postponed making arrangements. He knew that once Luo Feng became a lord, the territories of all the lords would be redistributed, and the Dark World group would become Luo Feng's absolute territory. According to the lord's rules, each lord's homeland world group belonged entirely to that lord, while the remaining world groups were jointly managed according to the cultivator camp's regulations. Therefore, despite Tien Lang K's breakthrough, the 7 lords already regarded the Dark World group as Luo Feng's future territory. On Primordial Island, Luo Feng continued his secluded cultivation. By that point, he had attempted to create the primordial life and death Tao exactly 38,291,022 times. More than 93% of those attempts had allowed him to sense the attraction of the highest level of power, making success feel constantly within reach yet forever unattainable. 1 billion eras had passed under accelerated time since he began creating the Tao, and the repeated failures had caused immense suffering. He had explored every possible approach, using the half-primordial life and death path as a foundation, the origin system as the core, the spiritual consciousness system as the core, and countless other methods. Eventually, Luo Feng exhausted every possible direction and no longer knew how to continue. Sitting in silence, he admitted that every possibility had already been tried. Behind him stood 15 avatars, each with slightly different appearances but each possessing an extremely terrifying aura and standing at the threshold of becoming a world-level primordial life form. These 15 avatars represented the most perfect results among more than 38 million creation attempts. And Luo Feng could no longer find any flaws in them. Luo Feng confirmed that he could no longer find flaws in his 15 avatars and moved to the next stage of his cultivation plan. His plan consisted of 3 steps, comprehending all primordial bloodlines and materials, creating the Tao, and practicing it. Since further enlightenment alone could not reveal additional problems, he decided to test the avatars through actual combat, focusing first on their survival abilities. Because his primordial life and death Tao emphasized life, an extremely large body, and exceptional survivability, he wanted to determine which design possessed the greatest endurance. Inside the vast space-time area of his cave mansion's quiet room, Luo Feng activated a grand formation and sent all 15 avatars inside. Each avatar remained at 1/10 of its extreme state so that all could be compared fairly without placing excessive strain on his soul. He instructed the formation to imitate attacks from innate primordial life, beginning at the early stage of high-level primordial life and gradually increasing the attack strength equally against every avatar. The formation first generated deep blue flames, then transformed them into deep blue frost while adding spatial blades and many other attacks. All 15 avatars remained unharmed. The attack strength steadily increased from the early stage to the middle stage and then the late stage of high-level primordial life. Minor damage eventually appeared, but every wound was instantly repaired by their tremendous vitality. When the attacks reached the early stage of world-level primordial power, the formation underwent a qualitative increase in strength. All 15 avatars suffered severe injuries. The second avatar, covered in silver-white scales, lost all its scales, flesh, skin, and fascia until only its black-gold skeleton remained protecting hundreds of origins. As the attacks intensified, the skeleton cracked, the origins disintegrated, and the avatar completely collapsed first. Luo Feng immediately realized that the second avatar had followed an incorrect mind consciousness system route. In order to enlarge the body, he had deliberately reduced the control strength of the mind consciousness system. Although this allowed rough control over a much larger body, it significantly weakened the defensive strength of its flesh and bones, making it the first avatar to collapse under equal attacks. The attacks continued with powerful fluctuations and freezing energy. The ninth avatar, covered in deep green scales, became the next to fail. Although its outer scales remained extremely durable, its muscles, bones, and organs disintegrated internally. Luo Feng realized this avatar had used a dual parallel creation concept by combining both the origin system and the blood scale system as equal cores. Inspired by the Star Tower blood scale's immortality, he attempted to pursue both systems simultaneously. But this actually weakened overall survivability. As the battle continued, all three avatars built with the dual parallel concept eventually collapsed, proving that trying to maintain two equal cores only weakened both. As the formation strength gradually increased throughout the early stage of world-level primordial power, avatar after avatar disintegrated. Each failure revealed specific design flaws and provided Luo Feng with valuable insights. When the attack strength reached the middle stage of world-level primordial power, only 3 avatars remained. By this point, the other 12 had already collapsed, allowing Luo Feng to thoroughly analyze their weaknesses. The formation became extraordinarily destructive, filling space with black flames, toxic mist, and violent distortions capable of instantly destroying ordinary high-level primordial lifeforms and even newly advanced world-level primordial beings. The remaining 3 were the 7th avatar, the smallest of all 15 yet built like a perfect weapon, the 12th avatar, the largest, whose enormous body endured through mind consciousness control, and the 11th avatar, only slightly smaller than the 12th. Luo Feng noticed that the 2 largest avatars and the smallest avatar had survived the longest. The 11th avatar especially surprised him. It had adopted the same reduced mind consciousness control approach as the failed second avatar. Yet instead of collapsing early, it endured until the final stage. Eventually all 3 physical bodies were destroyed almost simultaneously. The 7th and 12th avatars vanished completely. But the 11th avatar left behind 10,000 origins floating independently after its body had been annihilated. These 10,000 origins formed a star-like array and continued resisting the attacks even after the physical body had disappeared. This completely contradicted the nature of innate primordial lifeforms, whose physical bodies were normally much stronger than their life cores. Yet Luo Feng's 11th avatar possessed origins with greater survivability than its own flesh and bones. Even as increasingly powerful attacks, including lightning, struck continuously, each origin displayed extraordinary resilience. They endured for more than 100 breaths before gradually disintegrating one after another until none remained. Witnessing this result, Luo Feng became overjoyed because he finally understood the true direction of his primordial life and death Tao. Although reducing the control of the mind consciousness system had weakened the physical body's defenses, the 11th avatar possessed one enormous advantage. It had been created using the origin core creation method, producing the most perfect origin system. Previously, Luo Feng had believed that the half-primordial life and death path should always serve as the foundation of the Tao, constructing everything step by step from it. However, the 11th avatar ignored that sequence by constructing the origin system first and then building every other system around it. Luo Feng realized this approach was actually correct. He understood that the ultimate primordial life and death Tao should contain only one true core, the origin core. Every other system should revolve around that single foundation. The half-primordial life and death path remained the source of all his understanding and had already allowed him to comprehend the 6 major systems. But it did not need to serve as the structural foundation when constructing the Tao itself. Beginning with it could actually impose unnecessary limitations. Having fully absorbed the successes and failures demonstrated by all 15 avatars, Luo Feng gained complete confidence that he could create a more perfect primordial life and death Tao. He first reconstructed the 3 avatars that had survived the longest, using their advantages to greatly improve his spiritual thought processing speed and comprehension. He then officially began creating the Tao once more by engraving a new secret pattern into the void. This time starting directly with the construction of the origin system. Luo Feng's origin system differed fundamentally from the ancestor's life core. The ancestors' life core was innate, evolved naturally, contained the mysteries of many Taos, endless energy, and even the soul, so its destruction meant certain death. Luo Feng deliberately avoided creating such a fatal weakness. After comprehending the mysteries of origin, he established an origin system that excluded the soul, only accumulated endless energy, could not evolve, and was essentially a simplified version of the life core, although each individual origin was far weaker than an ancestor's life core. Billions of origins together possessed life power far exceeding the ancestors. Luo Feng followed the principle of removing weaknesses, preserving strengths, and grasping the essence, using the primordial as the foundation, the mind as the guide, and life and death intertwined into origin. He created countless origins that did not evolve because, as a cultivator, true strength came from understanding the essence of power rather than relying on evolution. As long as the Tao endured, the Lord would remain undying. Luo Feng believed this attempt was far more perfect than his previous 15 avatars and would move him closer to the primordial life and death Tao. Although he had already failed tens of millions of times and still did not expect immediate success, every improvement brought him closer to eventual success. In the land of origin, Tien Lang, who had advanced from a high-level primordial life to a world-level primordial by comprehending a bloodline, gathered with Guang Yu and an elder with a red nose. They praised Tien Lang for comprehending more than 70% of a world-level primordial bloodline and believed he had the potential to reach world-level primordial perfection. Tien Lang remained humble, believing this was already his limit. He reflected that fusion Tao cultivators possessed far greater comprehension, with many mastering multiple world-level primordial bloodlines before escaping the braided cage. However, among those cultivators, only Lord Nai Yu had become a lord through the bloodline path. Tien Lang, who advanced from a high-level primordial life, saw no hope of becoming a lord. Guang Yu explained that he had comprehended 5 world-level primordial bloodlines before escaping the braided cage and later mastered hundreds after becoming a world-level primordial, which was common among fusion Tao cultivators. Exceptional figures like Lord Nai Yu and Starlight Lord had comprehended hundreds even before escaping. Demonstrating extraordinary talent, Guang Yu asked why Lord Yuan had never summoned Tien Lang despite several epochs passing since his breakthrough. Tien Lang admitted he had received no summons, leaving him uneasy. Guang Yu found it strange because the lords maintained countless avatars and could easily receive promising juniors, while the elder with the red nose advised trusting the lord's arrangements. Tien Lang agreed but remained anxious because no duties had yet been assigned to him. Beside the dark lake in the land of origin, the 7 lords waited for the turning point of the war and the arrival of their future companion. At that moment, Yuan, Jin, Wulin, Ming Huang, Nai Yu, Starlight, and Mo Man simultaneously sensed Luo Feng's breakthrough on Primordial Island. Yuan was overjoyed because every new lord strengthened the once weak cultivator camp that he had struggled to protect since its earliest days. Jin celebrated that Luo Feng had broken through after only a little more than 25 epochs of secluded cultivation, much faster than Starlight had. Starlight happily admitted Luo Feng would be better suited for direct combat because the primordial life and death Tao naturally excelled in frontal battles, while his own strengths lay in space-time and assassination across countless timelines. Wulin observed that Luo Feng had broken the laws with force just as Starlight once had. Ming Huang, Nai Yu, and Mo Man all understood the extraordinary significance of this achievement. Unlike the other 6 lords, who first became world-level primordial life forms before comprehending the primordial Tao, Luo Feng had comprehended the supreme Tao while still beneath the braided cage. They believed that after his life level advanced, his already extraordinary comprehension would allow him to become even stronger. Among the current lords, only Starlight had already advanced beyond the ordinary lord level, while Yuan had taken half a step further. They believed Luo Feng would eventually reach that same level. Nai Yu reminded everyone that although the land of origin was concealed by the formation created by the 7 lords, Luo Feng's avatar outside would expose his breakthrough once it advanced. Starlight assured everyone he had already sealed the time-space around Luo Feng's retreat and would immediately warn him when the breakthrough was complete. Yuan insisted that Luo Feng's advancement must remain secret to launch a devastating surprise attack against the ancestors. Jin and Ming Huang both expressed intense determination to make the ancestors pay dearly for the enormous losses suffered by the cultivator camp. including the destruction of many world clusters and countless lives. They understood that revealing Luo Feng too early would allow the ancestors to retreat or prepare defenses, greatly weakening the effectiveness of the planned ambush. Therefore, the seven lords quietly watched Luo Feng's retreat and waited for his complete breakthrough. Meanwhile, Luo Feng continued creating the primordial life and death Tao. Drawing upon the experience gained from his previous 15 avatars, he fully expected failure and prepared himself for an extremely long period of cultivation. Unexpectedly, when the Tao was more than halfway complete, extraordinary visions appeared. Wisps of deep cyan supreme power surrounded the secret pattern map, flowing naturally with its structure. Luo Feng realized that the Tao itself transformed ordinary primordial force into the highest level of power. Even before completion, the Tao had already begun manifesting supreme power, proving he had chosen the correct path and personally completed its most crucial core. Remembering that even after traveling 90 miles, the final 10 miles remained the hardest, Luo Feng devoted himself entirely to perfecting the Tao. He continuously integrated additional secret patterns into the immense structure. Cyan and black secret patterns gradually merged into deep cyan patterns, forming the origin. The completion of the spiritual consciousness system caused the entire secret pattern map to shine with faint golden light, while the completion of the physical body system added a blood-red radiance resembling the Star Tower blood scale. Finally, the complete and perfect secret pattern map manifested. Looking upon the culmination of all his efforts, Luo Feng felt that his life itself now continued through the Tao. Previously, he had relied upon avatars to survive, but now the Tao itself had become part of his existence. Wherever the Tao existed, he also existed. He could project avatars throughout boundless regions, allowing them to absorb energy and develop independently. Luo Feng finally succeeded in creating the primordial life and death Tao. With a single thought, the visible secret pattern map disappeared completely because the Tao could exist both visibly and invisibly. After just over 2.5 billion eras of secluded cultivation, while less than 2,000 eras had passed externally and the war situation remained largely unchanged with the source world of the land of origin still intact, Starlight Lord congratulated Luo Feng on successfully taking this decisive step. Luo Feng successfully created the primordial life and death Tao. Although his life form had not yet mutated, the Tao had become part of his existence, completely transforming him. By relying on his own Tao, he could sense a space-time fluctuation approaching, and for the first time he clearly felt the threatening aura of the Starlight Lord, showing that they had reached the same level of existence. The Starlight Lord informed him that during the recent war, more than 1/6 of the practitioner camp's territory had fallen, with countless source worlds, ordinary worlds, and cultivators destroyed. The seven lords were currently using their main battle avatars to hold back 73 ancestors, while the outside world still did not know that an eighth lord had been born. Luo Feng was instructed to keep his breakthrough secret, and all of his avatars outside the land of origin were forbidden from breaking through because the ancestors could easily detect them, whereas the land of origin concealed such breakthroughs. Luo Feng agreed, understanding that remaining hidden would allow him to strike the ancestors unexpectedly in the future. After that, the Starlight Lord stopped disturbing him so he could complete his breakthrough. Inside the quiet room of his cave mansion, Luo Feng dispersed all of his avatars and gathered vast amounts of energy under the guidance of his spiritual consciousness. The land of origin continuously supplied an enormous flow of energy, enough in a single breath to sustain a world-level primordial perfection life form, and over 90% of that energy was directed toward Luo Feng. Soon, 1,080,000,000 dark green origins appeared within the cave mansion, interconnected like a massive star array to become the core of his physical body. Endless energy poured into those origins without limit as they continuously absorbed everything they received. Using the origins as the foundation, countless dark green, golden, and blood-red strands expanded outward, gradually constructing an enormous body clothed in black. Luo Feng's skin, fascia, muscles, and bones were all permeated with blood-red strands derived from the mysteries of the Star Tower blood scale. Rather than merely creating powerful armor on the surface, he integrated the blood scale's mysteries throughout every part of his body so that no internal weakness remained. Although the primordial life and death Tao would normally produce dark green blood, the blood-red strand system altered the color of his blood, muscles, and bones. Luo Feng estimated that each part of his body possessed only 1/10 of the defensive strength of the Star Tower bloodscale itself. But because every part shared the same toughness, his entire body contained no weak points. His body continued expanding as he absorbed more and more energy while remaining within the limits of his spiritual consciousness. The cave mansion became far too small for him to stand, forcing him to remain seated cross-legged while compressing his size, although his true physical form continued growing. Meanwhile, the seven lords closely observed his breakthrough. Jin noticed that Luo Feng was already absorbing more energy than he possessed. Yuan explained that because the primordial life and death Tao focused primarily on life, Luo Feng's body would likely surpass all of theirs except possibly Lord Wulin. Ming Huang remarked that Wulin's body was already unimaginably vast, equivalent to an entire normal source world composed entirely of powerful material rather than empty space. Even attacks from more than 70 ancestors could only restrain Wulin instead of seriously harming him. The lords also mentioned the ancestor named Origin, whose perfectly spherical body represented the pinnacle of the defense Dao and possessed even greater defensive ability than Wulin. Although both Origin and Wulin lacked offensive power because their attacks were relatively clumsy. Naijiu observed that Luo Feng's absorbed energy had already surpassed his own, while Wulin estimated Luo Feng had only reached about 1/10 of his energy. However, Luo Feng continued absorbing endlessly until he reached half of Wulin's energy. Then 80%, then equaled Wulin, and finally far surpassed him. Ming Huang concluded that another nearly indestructible being had appeared. Mo Man commented that greater survivability usually meant weaker offense, while Yuan agreed that the life path naturally emphasized vitality over attack. The Starlight Lord argued that because Luo Feng followed the path of breaking laws with force, this temporary weakness would eventually disappear. All the lords agreed that breaking laws with force possessed the greatest future potential. Yuan decided they would study Luo Feng's combat methods after his breakthrough to determine how to coordinate with him. Eventually Luo Feng stopped absorbing energy after accumulating more than 3 times Wulin's total energy. Mo Man sighed that even 1/10 of Luo Feng's energy would be desirable, since his own total energy amounted to only 1/30th of Wulin's, roughly 1% of Luo Feng's. Although his offensive abilities were correspondingly terrifying, after completing the absorption, Luo Feng returned to his normal size. A terrifying life and death operation system naturally spread from his body, similar to the supreme operating system governing a source world's origin but even more powerful. Within the area influenced by his main body, even world-level primordial life forms would die under the effects of this life and death operation system. Luo Feng felt complete satisfaction as the 1,080,000,000 origins inside him reached full capacity. Although his physical body had reached its maximum size, it still contained 10 times more energy than was stored directly within the 1,080,000,000 origins themselves. If he revealed his true form, it would measure approximately 1/3 the size of his home source world. Every part of that enormous body possessed 1/10 of the toughness of the Star Tower bloodscale, giving it overwhelming physical strength. Having fully completed his breakthrough, Luo Feng truly understood the power of a lord. He realized that a single breath from him could reduce a world-level primordial life form to ashes. Immediately afterward, the Starlight Lord transmitted all of the seven lords' Daos, together with every piece of intelligence they had gathered regarding the ancestor-level beings of the infinite primordial space. He instructed Luo Feng to study the information and quickly create combat techniques suited to his new power. Luo Feng accepted all the knowledge instantly, fully aware that although he had only just become a lord, he would soon enter the battlefield against more than 70 ancestors, making him clearly feel the immense pressure ahead. The information stream transmitted to Luo Feng contained a vast amount of common knowledge that every lord was expected to master. It explained the overall structure of the land of origin, the locations of its secret regions, the composition of its grand formation, and the methods for entering and leaving different areas. Through this information, Luo Feng also learned that a lord-level cave mansion had already been prepared for him. Every lord possessed an enormous cave mansion that occupied a fixed position within the land of origin, each serving as an important stronghold. Luo Feng's cave mansion was located at one of the formation's core nodes. And with his arrival as the 8th lord, the entire formation of the land of origin became even more stable. After absorbing this information, Luo Feng extended his thoughts across the entire land of origin. His consciousness instantly connected with the other 7 lords. More than 200 world-level primordials, over 80 million high-level primordials, and some cultivators living inside the braided cage. However, among all these beings, only the other 7 lords were capable of perceiving his thoughts and communicating with him directly. Yuan immediately congratulated Luo Feng on becoming the 8th lord of the cultivator camp. He expressed great joy, believing that Luo Feng's breakthrough would completely reverse the course of the ongoing war and ultimately change the destiny of the entire cultivator territory. Jin also welcomed Luo Feng and urged him to quickly absorb the enormous amount of information available to every lord and fully comprehend his own combat techniques. Once Luo Feng had mastered everything, the 8 lords could carefully study how to coordinate their abilities in battle and launch their counterattack against the ancestors. Having endured suppression for an extremely long time, Jin eagerly awaited the opportunity to fight back. Lord Wulin was equally delighted because Luo Feng possessed life energy that exceeded his own by more than 3 times. During previous group battles, Wulin had always served as the main defensive force, enduring the direct attacks of numerous ancestors. Although Yuan's formations greatly supported him, the ancestors also wielded the highest level of power and possessed countless unpredictable methods, forcing Wulin to struggle merely to hold back most of them. With Luo Feng joining the battlefield, the defensive burden would no longer fall upon Wulin alone, allowing both of them to support each other while protecting the remaining lords. Ming Huang simply offered his congratulations without saying much. Lord Naijiu, however, was extremely optimistic after Luo Feng's breakthrough. He believed that with both Wulin and Luo Feng standing on the front lines, the cultivator camp would easily stabilize future confrontations against the innate primordial life camp. Since Wulin specialized in defense while Luo Feng possessed more than 3 times Wulin's life energy, the two of them together would greatly reduce the pressure on the other lords, whose physical bodies were much weaker. Naijiu recalled that during previous battles, whenever Wulin became tied down, the overwhelming assaults launched by numerous ancestors had nearly destroyed the primary battle avatars of Jin, Ming Huang, and Moman. Dangerous situations like that had occurred repeatedly, and Naijiu had grown tired of constantly facing such life-threatening battles. Luo Feng's arrival finally gave him confidence that future battles would be much safer. Lord Moman also welcomed Luo Feng warmly, explaining that he had long anticipated Luo Feng's appearance because everyone already knew that Luo Feng specialized in the life path while using the power-breaking technique. Every lord understood the tremendous value of a companion who excelled in the mysteries of life, making Luo Feng's arrival especially important to the entire cultivator camp. Luo Feng thanked all 7 lords and replied that his immediate priority was to study the combat techniques available to him. He understood that these 7 lords would become his most trusted companions throughout the endless years ahead in the infinite primordial space, together forming the strongest defensive force protecting the entire cultivator camp. Luo Feng then took a single step and instantly arrived at his lord-level cave mansion. The cave mansion occupied an enormous oceanic region within the land of origin, covering roughly 1% of the entire territory. Built upon the foundation of the land of origin itself, the cave mansion contained countless overlapping layers of expanded time and space. The total size of these internal dimensions exceeded that of an entire source world. Luo Feng sat cross-legged at the center of this immense domain and decided that before studying anything else, he needed to thoroughly understand the abilities of the other 7 lords because he had never experienced battles fought between lords and ancestors. Thanks to his unimaginable increase in thinking speed after becoming a lord, Luo Feng rapidly comprehended the Daos created by each of the 7 lords, their combat techniques, and many of their cultivation experiences. While studying Jin, Luo Feng learned that Jin had created the primordial destruction Dao. According to Jin's own explanation, this Dao consisted of 9 parts destruction and 1 part life because pure destruction alone could not construct or sustain life forms. A small amount of life mystery had to be incorporated to complete the Dao. This immediately reminded Luo Feng of the sky-splitting saber that he had previously obtained through exchange. The saber followed an almost identical path, containing approximately 9 parts destruction and 1 part life. Holding the sky-splitting saber in his hand, Luo Feng sensed a distant and mysterious place overflowing with endless destructive energy. Even with his current Lord-level strength, the region felt incomparably vast and unfathomable. Inside that mysterious realm, thousands upon thousands of weapons were being nurtured naturally, each one indestructible and perfectly suitable for use as a Lord-level weapon. From this observation, Luo Feng confirmed that the sky-splitting saber contained the highest-level mysteries of destruction and truly qualified as a Lord-level weapon. He also realized that the mysterious realm contained countless similar weapons, suggesting that it concealed enormous secrets. Luo Feng became highly interested in investigating this place and believed that the other lords probably possessed intelligence concerning it. Nevertheless, he understood that the war remained the highest priority. So he focused first on learning intelligence about the lords, the ancestors, and other fundamental knowledge. The deeper mysteries of the infinite primordial space could be explored after the war had ended. After becoming a lord, Luo Feng's perception of the infinite primordial space increased dramatically. He could now sense numerous mysterious regions that had previously been completely beyond his awareness. Some of these places were impossible to conceal from his perception, while several emitted an overwhelming sense of danger powerful enough to threaten even his current strength. Before becoming a lord, the only extraordinary place he had known was the infinite world created by the infinite Great Serpent clan, which allowed travelers to instantly reach any location throughout the infinite primordial space. Now, however, he realized that the infinite primordial space contained many more mysterious and terrifying places that he had never known existed.